of the more interesting recent stories regarding an actor or an actress would easily be Jonathan Majors. So this guy was in the newest Creed movie that came out in 2023, but more importantly, he was hired by Disney, Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige to be Kane the Conqueror, to be the next big bad of the MCU. He was hired to be the next Thanos, to be the next big bad overarching villain, specifically the villain for the multiverse saga. So Disney invested all their eggs into the Kane basket. So they set him up in Loki and Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, but you could already see that their strategy wasn't working the way they were hoping it would. Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania failed to build up momentum and traction for the MCU. It failed to make a big splash or make audience members believe that Kane was really a big threat. So on the one hand, Disney was already running into problems with Kane, and then Jonathan Majors started to have some really big legal troubles because at the beginning of 2023, I think it was, major charges were brought against Jonathan Majors for harassment and assault, and therefore Disney Marvel Studios were put into a pretty difficult spot, honestly, pretty awkward spot, because on the one hand, if they fired Jonathan Majors before a determination was reached, then they could potentially be firing someone who's actually innocent. But on the other hand, if they don't fire him, they still need to figure out a way to move forward with their franchise. So therefore, Disney and Marvel Studios were basically in a holding pattern for about 9 months. And then a bit later on in 2023, Jonathan Majors' trials came to an end, and it was determined that Jonathan Majors is guilty of harassment and assault. Now, it wasn't as bad, legally speaking, as it could have been, because he was found guilty of 2 charges, but then not guilty of 2 other charges, meaning it could have been worse for him, but he was found guilty, and therefore Disney fired him, they let him go. So now they're trying to figure out, well, who's going to be the next big bad now? Who's going to be the big villain of the multiverse saga? And now Jonathan Majors could be sent to jail for up to a year. Parole is on the table. We'll have to see exactly what happens to him from a legal standpoint. It's honestly sad, I would say, because Jonathan Majors could have been the next big rising star, but then whatever happened with him, things are now not looking up for him, unfortunately. So I think this is one of the more interesting recent stories, honestly. It's about someone who was hired by a major studio to play a big bad villain, but then was found legally guilty and then was fired by that same studio.